From Fresh Off the Boat, Crazy Rich Asians, Hustlers, and much more, Constance Wu is indeed making a scene. In a collection of deeply personal and moving essays, Wu takes you on her journey to stardom, from being raised by Taiwanese immigrant parents, moving to New York, and getting her big break on the first American sitcom to feature an Asian-American family in more than 20 years. Wu truly bears it all and shows her incredible strength and grace as a human being, survivor, mom, and actress. Constance, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, of course, the book is called Making a Scene. You talk about how early on in your childhood you were told not to make a scene, that it was unladylike. At what point did you feel that you were able to break out of the constraints of that?
Well, I think it wasn't just me. I think a lot of women in America, as girls, were taught not to make scenes because it's unbecoming or at least uncool, you know? And I think I was very lucky in that at a young age, I discovered community theater, where you're literally making scenes of a play and where emotions are celebrated. And that became sort of my outlet. I didn't start applying those lessons. And developing those tools for dealing with my big emotions until my late 30s. That is sort of really when it came to be, and writing this book was a big part of that journey.
You talked about dealing with big emotions. Would you say that this was cathartic, actually putting your words to the pages?
Very much so. I surprised even myself as I was typing out these stories. I didn't realize how much I had been holding back over the years. Because I just thought, like, oh, that's my job, just to shut up and be grateful. And I am grateful, and I don't have any reason to complain. I mean, I did, because I was being sexually harassed on the set of my show, but I also had such good fortune on the other hand. So it was like weighing which one do I talk about. And when I wrote about it, it made me recognize how many wounds that I had not addressed, and that I needed to open up to finally let them start healing.
And you talk about that sexual harassment that you say that you faced at the hands of one of the senior members of the production staff from Fresh Off the Boat. And you say that for years you really didn't think that you were going to ever say anything about it. This was obviously before the Me Too movement. At what point did you find your strength to say, I'm just going to bear it all?
Well, I thought I would never say anything about it because I thought I, quote unquote, took care of it. Because it only happened for the first couple of years. And then once I was no longer scared of losing my job, I actually completely stopped speaking to that producer. I did not have to take his threats and intimidation anymore. I still, to this day, have not spoken to him.
So you never confronted him either?
Never.
But he knows you're talking about him?
Oh, yeah.
And he's never,
I got the receipts.
And he's never said anything to you subsequently?
We have not spoken to each other since season 2 of the show.
You mentioned the word grateful, and you said that you are grateful. Many people, there was that backlash on social media where people felt that you were ungrateful. Tell me about the tweet that then caused the turmoil, that then caused you to leave social media.
Oh, it was bad. I was like, oh my God, I'm so mad. Like, I don't blame anybody who was like, oh my gosh, because if I had seen that without context, I would have been like, this is not the Constance Wu I know. This is not anything.
Well, for our viewers who don't know, there was a tweet about how the show was coming.
When my show was renewed, even though we expected it not to be renewed, because like the showrunner was leaving, everybody was leaving, we had the series finale written and shot, I was upset that it was renewed. And that I would have to go back to the set where I had these memories of abuse and harassment and trauma. But people didn't know that. They just thought, oh, she just had this big hit movie, Crazy Rich Asians, and now she's biting the hand that feeds her, and she's not even being grateful for that. And she's not considering the jobs of everybody else on Fresh Off the Boat, when what those critics didn't realize was that I actually kept my mouth shut for 6 years in order to preserve the reputation of the show, in order to preserve everybody else's jobs on the show at the expense of my own mental well-being. And it came out in an ungraceful way that wasn't my finest moment, but it's also a moment that was very human considering what I had to go through.
You left social media, ultimately decided to come back. Why?
What I realized was that the people that I'm trying to reach with this message about mental health, the people who are being trolled on social media, the people who need this message, they're not the ones who are necessarily buying my book. They're the people who are scrolling Twitter and feeling so isolated and alone. So how am I going to reach the people who aren't buying my book? How am I going to help? How am I going to use this experience that I had to help people say, it's okay to talk about these things, and hey, I go through it too.
What you were talking about, that isolation,
Yeah.
and at some point it got so bad for you that you were considering jumping. And I'm wondering what kept you from jumping on that night? At your lowest moment, what kept you alive?
Well, it was definitely a very low moment. I had a DM from an Asian actress, former colleague of mine, who basically made me feel like I didn't deserve to be alive, that I was a disgrace to the Asian American community. And luckily, I had a friend come over who had access to my apartment, and she took me off of the balcony and brought me downstairs, put me in a cab, and took me to a psychiatric ER. And I was like terrified. I was like, don't let anybody know. You can't officially check me in. Because I was so embarrassed that this was happening. It was just from this place of social media and isolation that made me want to help other people going through the same thing.
I think that people will pick up this book and find themselves in some aspect here. And so we thank you so much for sharing. And to our viewers, Making a Scene by Constance Wu is now available wherever books are sold. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.